Good afternoon, everyone. Well, this was an interesting adventure. If your finely tuned eye tells you that this is a Chevy Big Block, you would be correct. It's a 454, came out of an 87 Suburban. I had freshly rebuilt this thing a little under a year ago. So then you might be asking, why is it sitting here looking like trash? Well, I was in a hurry when I was rebuilding this engine, and I had made a fatal mistake. Luckily, it was my own engine. And what was that fatal mistake, you may ask? Well, most every other time that I've built an engine, I reused the factory connecting rods and pistons, and they were press-in style. However, the kind that I used for this setup were free-float wrist pins, and it was unbeknownst to me that there was a wrist pin keeper that you were supposed to install in the pistons. I did not install those. And this was the result. Yeah. You want to talk about a massive fail? However, what happened after it grenaded just gives me more faith in Chevy, and I'll explain why. I grenaded pistons 1 and I believe 6. Yeah, 1 and 6. Here's the kicker. The engine was still running afterwards. It was still going. It was complaining a shitload, but it was still running. Had a lot of smoke coming out the pipe, but oh well. It still ran. It got me home. So when they say Chevy runs deep, oh yeah, it runs deep. Now, if it was only the pistons that were affected in this, it wouldn't be so bad. I would just replace the pistons, rehome the cylinders, and put the engine back together. However, since my dumbass didn't immediately turn the engine off as soon as I realized something was wrong, we had a little bit more damage. Look closely and I'll show you. I scored the shit out of the cylinder walls, and I mean holy shit did I score them. Cylinder 1 actually isn't that bad, thankfully. So what's going to be my course of action? Well, that's going to be the simple part. I'm going to completely tear down the block again, salvage all the good parts, which is mostly everything. When I get the chance, I'm going to be bringing the bare block down to the machine shop and finding out whether or not I can hone the cylinders, bore them out, because there's still a lot of meat on those cylinder walls from the looks of the markings from the head gasket. So if I have to bore this thing to a 496, I'll bore it to a 496. If I have to go bigger and tolerances will allow me to, then I will do that. Don't know just yet. But one thing I do know is that I need a working truck, so I have a plan for that. Observe. What you see before you is a Chevrolet 350 small block from around the same time period too. I fired this thing off already. It runs like a top even with that carburetor on. Just ignore the crazy glue. I was using that to plug up the vacuum port so that way I could properly tune this thing. And yeah, this is what I'm going to be using in the truck. Now, since I am lacking certain parts to do the final assembly, I'm going to be using the original gearbox that I had in it when I put the big block in, which would be that lug right there. All the numbers that I pulled off of it to check to see what kind it was told me Saginaw M27, which I didn't even know that that model existed, but you know what? Fuck it. Now, the only downside to the situation is the fact that since it is a 3-speed manual transmission, it does not have overdrive. So I'm going to have to stick to doing, back roads. I'm not really going to want to attempt any long distance driving on the interstate, but I do have a contingency for this. This right here would happen to be my contingency plan. This is a Tremec T5, I believe. It's a 5-speed manual transmission, 4 regular gears and 1 overdrive gear. And yes, I do have the correct bell housing for it to bolt up. So in order to make the 5-speed work, I have to do 2 modifications. One, I have to get the line set up for the slave cylinder that's designed for that one in order to get the clutch to function properly. And 2, I have to shorten the drive shaft 3 inches in order for it to fit, because of course it's a 5-speed, it has 2 more gears than the 3-speed did, so it is going to naturally be longer. There's one other thing that I have to do, but it doesn't require me buying anything. I simply just have to figure out where the shifter is going to shoot up on that thing and cut a new hole in the floorboard. Now with a little bit of cleanup, the lifters could still be reused. Camshaft looks like it might still need some cleaning, but it is still serviceable. But I think you've heard me prattle on for long enough. Let's get to tearing down this 454, shall we? So, I got the oil pan and the oil pump out. And this is just a personal preference for me, but if anybody's just getting into this stuff, do yourself a favor and get the frickin' silicone oh my god, Felpro gaskets. They are reusable. They are reusable. Don't get that cork shit. Just do yourself a favor. Get the Felpro frickin' rubber silicone gaskets. I say this because when you tear the engine down and have to do some troubleshooting or rebuilding, you could still reuse the Felpro gaskets after you rebuild it. You don't have to go out and buy all new gaskets, unless of course you've flattened them beyond measure, but this gasket was only in there for like 1,000 miles. Not even really, so fucking notifications. Now let's take a look at what the rotating assembly looks like from the bottom. Oh, this lighting is not helping me. But it doesn't look like it fared out too bad. I mean, it looks like the bottom end survived. By the way, I put the oil pump bolt back in because that was a motherfucker to have to find last time. So the next thing on my list is getting all the pistons out, which, if I had a tripod, I would do a time-lapse of me doing that, but I don't have one. I do, however, have a Patreon page if you guys want to donate to the channel, and I can get all this stuff so you guys can see more in depth on this. But I'll see you again once I've got the pistons out. Okay, so as you know, I already dropped the oil pan, got the oil pump out, and I just took out the pistons and the lifters. Here's what I've discovered. One, a rule of thumb that I learned from older mechanics from other generations is when you want to find out what the hell happened in an engine, drop the oil pan when it's facing downward so you can capture the story. Well, here's the story, and it's not all that good. Yeah. It's starting to look like a third world country in here. Got the pistons out, of course, and yeah, I did grenade 6 and 1, but all the rest of the pistons and connecting rods seem to have survived. I did get the lifters out, as I have stated. Now, of course, I don't have a board or something that I could drill a hole into and label where they went when they came out, so I have a different technique. I label them like this. This is obvious, well, not obviously, but it is cylinder 8, the front one. So that would mean that this one went right here. However, unfortunately, further inspection shows that I had at least one collapsed lifter. This was on one of the pistons that grenaded, so I think I know why it collapsed. In basics, once the piston kissed the valve, the lifter had nowhere to go, so it said, "Fuck you, I'm out of here," and collapsed. This also means that I need to replace all the lifters, because if you got one bad one, you just replace them all. Just do it. Now for the next thing on my list. The next thing on my list will be taking the crank pulley off and the harmonic balancer. That way I can actually take the crank out of this thing. And of course the timing and the cam and all that good jazz. I'll be right with you once I've gotten that handled. Well, I got the timing cover, well, you see what I got off. Luckily, the crank survived. The timing chain and the harmonic balancer, they're in good shape still. The block, however, eek. Let's go cylinder by cylinder. Not bad. Fuck my life. Oof. This was cylinder 1. And all the rest of these, of course, were not half bad. However, seeing how gouged cylinder 6 and 1 are, it looks like I'm going to have 2 possible options. Option 1, as I already stated, was boring the cylinders out to possibly a 509. I did some homework last night on it. However, option number 2, that I did not even know was an option, was I didn't know that you could sleeve these things. I knew that you could sleeve import engines, but I did not know that you could sleeve these things. And which, if that's the case, I bore out the cylinders. Well, I have it sent to the machine shop to have the cylinders bored out to get all the roughness out. And then I have sleeves installed in, well, probably all of them. Thus bringing it back to 454 bore, or 4.25 bore size. However, luckily, I do have the small block as a backup. And also, luckily, the clutch that I had bolted up to the big block is a direct bolt-on for the small block's flywheel. Winning! I'll be bringing the engine up to the machine shop probably around Tuesday. Right now it's Sunday night, and we'll see whether or not I get good news or fuck my life. Thank you all for watching. If you like what I'm doing here, be sure to like, subscribe, bang that notification bell, and I'll be seeing you all later. Torque out.